Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Terri Jay, also known as the Cowgirl Shaman. She's an author, speaker, clinician, and entertainer who helps people and their animals to heal their lives with messages she receives. Today, we'll be talking about her work as well as how the metaphysical world can be explained in terms of physics. Terri, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
How did you get the moniker Cowgirl Shaman?
Well, I had to change my branding somehow, and it just fits. I've been a horse person my whole life. I live in Nevada. I'm very, very out west. I consider myself a cowgirl, and a shaman, to me, is the perfect thing to add to that, because a shaman is a healer, which is, my work is all healing, and it also is someone who's connected to the other realms, which I do when I communicate with both people and pets on the other side.
Horses are intuitive creatures, aren't they? Because I've been told that several times that people that spend a lot of time around horses can have a tendency to connect with that realm that you just mentioned.
Yeah, but see, they're also telepathic. So if you're trying to develop your abilities, they're easy. Dogs have us well trained, but horses, they need to communicate with us. And because they're all telepathic and they're used to communicating with each other that way, it's just a real easy reach for them to get through to us telepathically, too.
Now, speaking of intuition and gifts such as mediumship, how did you develop your gifts? Were you seeing spirits when you were young and being able to read energy or maybe even read minds when you were younger, or did that not necessarily happen?
The only thing I remember from my childhood is doing astral projection, which I didn't have a word for it. But I would wake up in terror of finding myself out in space. That was the only thing weird about my childhood. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what it was called. I thought it was my imagination. Now I know what it is. What happened to me is I was doing a horseback therapy program with disabled kids, and I heard a nonverbal child speak to me. But it didn't click at the time that he wasn't talking out loud. I was hearing him mentally. So we continued with our lesson, and I took him off the horse and put him back in his wheelchair, and he went back to class. And the girl who was helping me said, "Boy, he sure is talking good." And I said, "We know he's very bright. Just because he has CP doesn't necessarily mean he has any cognitive issues." And she looked at me and said, "Terri, he didn't say a word. He can't, remember? If I was a horse, I would have done a buck fart snort, because they do all three of those things at one time when they're spooked." And I was spooked. So I went into the classroom and they had put a pointer on and he had typed out on his computer, "Horse lady can hear me." So I had confirmation right then and there.
Wow.
That was my first time. That was back in 1990. I hadn't done anything weird, or I didn't believe in mediums. I didn't believe in the word psychic, anything. I'd never had my cards read, nothing. I thought it was all a bunch of BS.
When was it when you realized that you had the clairs? Because that instance with the boy, was that what you would call being clairaudient, or was that telepathy?
I would say both. I don't think we need to separate them. I think everybody has all these abilities, and together they can create telepathy for you too, and remote viewing, map dowsing, all of the things that I do. These are all abilities. I don't believe they're gifts. I think anyone, unless you have severe cognitive disabilities, I think anyone can really learn to do this.
I'm hearing that more and more from the intuitives. I had a talk with a girl the other night where she basically said, "I can do all the things a medium does, but I prefer to communicate and get information from my team," which means her spirit guides,
Sure.
rather than try to talk to spirits, because that can be very draining. Do you find the same thing?
Not for me. It energizes me. I'm full of piss and vinegar anyway. I'm really, really high energy. When I talk with people on the other side, it's exciting for me, especially the details. I really would think my TV show should be called "I Can't Make This Stuff Up," but I want to use a different S word because it's so fun. Then when you get the reactions from your clients, and they're in shock because they know you really have connected with their loved ones on the other side. It's so fun. My favorite things are talking to dead people and dead animals and talking to barrel horses. Those are my favorite things to do.
I wanted to ask, when was the first time that you started to receive messages from the other side? And also, how do you know it's actually them and not a mischievous spirit who's got nothing better to do?
I think it was just a very gradual process for me, and I'm very thankful it was a gradual process, because I think of all of the things that I do now, all of the information that I get. I was just at Wally World buying a couple groceries, and I was medically reading everyone in line. So it's like, what are you going to do with that information? Go tap him on the shoulder and say, yeah, okay, you have this health issue. Bye-bye. You can't do that. It has to be appropriate. You never want to ambush people with information. I really think that I started reading and studying. First, I just wanted to do animal communication. We always had horses, always had a bunch of dogs and a couple cats. I just really wanted to be able to communicate with them. And especially because of doing the therapeutic riding program, I wanted to be able to thank them for their contributions. They elicited miracles out of these kids. That was my main goal. But what happened is as I was doing readings for people, I would hear their deceased loved ones. The deceased loved ones had messages to give them. And I would tell them and apologize. I know this is a little weird, but I can hear your daughter that's passed. And then the details that I got were so specific, there's no way I could have known.
The hard-boiled skeptics, even some of them that are supposedly psychic, will say, how do we know that's not someone just reading energy or reading their minds? What would you tell them then?
I'm not that tuned into people. I'm more tuned into what I get from guidance. I don't differentiate where I'm getting it, except if I'm communicating with a person on the other side for their loved one and I get something negative. I understand very implicitly that information is coming from guidance. It is never, never coming from the deceased. Because when people die, all of their negativity gets shed off and left behind in the earthly realm. So if you're sharing negative stuff in a medium reading, you're dumpster diving. You're in the garbage that was left behind. And of course, that negative energy garbage is what causes hauntings.
Okay. You were telling me this the last time we spoke. How did you discover that we shed our negative energy once we leave this realm?
I think it came from a lot of communication with people on the other side. It was just happy, happy, happy. I never got anything negative. And if I did, it was as if guides tapped me on the shoulder and went, by the way, here's some negative information they may want to know. And it was so different. It was so separate. It was never the dead person communicating negative stuff to me.
Have you ever gotten that type of negative information that you did not want to share with the sitter because it might upset them?
Often. The other thing I'll do is, let's say you had horrible parents and you have the daughter who's just beside themselves because now they're dead. They can't tell them off and they get very frustrated. And what's interesting is when you have really negative people or bad people, when they pass, they have their V8 moment, where they smack their forehead and said, I could have had a V8 or I could have done things differently. In that moment, in that nanosecond before they cross, the apology is in there. The apology to everyone they've maligned is in that. And of course, then that's all stays behind. So if I go dumpster diving for somebody to get those kinds of things like an apology or an explanation, I'm very specific that I am dumpster diving.
The negative energy that's left behind, when you run into that, that's what you call dumpster diving. Is that like a tape loop that just repeats, or is it coming from an intelligence?
I want to call it residual energy. To me, that's the best way to describe it. It's just residual energy. You know what, Johnny? It's no different than walking into a room where there's people and unbeknownst to you, there's been a big argument and you're walking in after the dust has settled and you feel slimed energetically because all of that negative garbage that those people were spewing at each other is still there in the room. It's like, I'm going to go get my Epsom salts and Everclear. I'll be right back because that's how I'm going to clear it.
So you've run into guides. What about angels and otherwise beings of light? Do you come across them in your work?
Yeah, I have. And I've got really strong opinions about this because of what I've gone through. I think everybody has to go on their own frame of reference. But my experience has been that angels have only one function. That's save your hiney when they can, as much as they can, and then they're gone. I never get messages from angels. Never. Any messages I get are from guides or from people or animals on the other side or ones that are alive and in this present state. I know the conversation is like this when you hear voices and you go, oh, are you my angels? The guides are going to go, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm your angel. And it's like, are you the Archangel Michael? Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm the Archangel Michael. They're going to say whatever because you're finally listening. But that's your guides. It's never your angels. There's so many people that have written so many books about messages they've gotten from angels. And I swear my guides roll their eyes when they hear that stuff. It's like, no, it's not angels.
It sounds like your guides have a sense of humor. Is that true?
Well, yeah, they're a reflection of my personality with a good connection to the other side. So that's what they are.
So what is the relationship between me, my spirit guide, and my higher self? I think that's confusing for a lot of people.
I think guides are a verbalization of your higher self. I look at it all being corded to the other side. That I think we bring in guides that are fun, that are entertaining, that we'll pay attention to. So they have to have some aspect of our personality where we go, oh, this is fun. Oh, I like this one. I've got a guide that helps me cook in the kitchen, and she sounds like she's from Minnesota. Well, I love that accent. So I'm being entertained. Minnesota. Anyway, I've got a gay guy who tells me what to wear all the time. He picks out my clothes. It's like, wear this and you'll look fabulous. Because I just have such an affinity for our LGBTQ populations. I love them. I love them to pieces. I grew up showing horses with a gay couple, and we just had so much fun. I couldn't think of LGBTQ populations in any negative way. I couldn't because, again, of my background. So I think it's all a connection. If you can picture a cord that connects you to your guides, and then that connects you to your higher self, and that connects you to the other side. I think it's just all that energetic connection. And it really just depends on who you're listening to at the time. We have so many different aspects to our personalities. It'd be boring if we were just kind of a monotone personality, wouldn't it?
Most definitely. I was always hoping that if I have a spirit guide, hopefully I do. Hopefully I have several.
Everybody has lots.
Hopefully they have a laugh here and there where they can look at each other and say, oh, Jesus, what is he doing now? Come on.
Exactly. Of course they do. If I was going to name mine, I'd call them the eye rollers. They're always rolling their eyes at me. Oh, goodness, what's she up to now?
It sounds to me like you have no doubt that when our loved ones pass, friends and family, that they don't go away. They're on the other side. And I hear from just about everybody I talk to that they are actually connected to our lives presently. Do you find the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The best way to describe it is they become non-physical. They're non-physical energy beings. And then we have to have that really hard dividing line, which is present in physics, where all you're going to get and all that exists on the other side is positivity. There's no negativity on the other side. Sometimes people say, oh, I wish I could talk to my dad. I've got a problem. You have the wherewithal to connect to your guides to solve the problem. You have that. You just need to learn to use it. But the problem is that people on the other side can't perceive anything negative in the earthly realm. A really clear way of looking at it is if you say, oh, I love you so much. As you're starting to say that, they're saying, oh, I love you too, right back to you. If you say, I miss you so much, they can't hear you.
Really?
They cannot hear you because that's a negative.
You mentioned physics a moment ago, and I remember you telling me before that the metaphysical can be explained purely in terms of physics. Tell us about that.
To me, everything is physics. God is physics. God, the higher power, source energy, it still all comes down to physics. You can't say everything is physics and then have exceptions. It's an absolute. It's an absolute. So even source energy, which is my words for a higher power, it still comes down to energy. It's certainly not a guy with a beard on a cloud somewhere. If it's the God of the universe, what planet is he going to be sitting on a cloud near? Right? It doesn't make any sense. If you think of it as energy, but energy that you can connect to, that you are connected to all the time, and that you're not separate from it, it just makes things a lot easier to fathom. I always think of the fact that we have mitosis in the cells. Anybody who's taken high school biology understands that. Mitosis is the creation of energy. If you're creating energy, then you are God, but only for you. You are the creator. It's not just for you. Too many people talk about God as being something external. It can't be. It can be external, but it has to be internal too.
It seems to be in everything and everyone. That's a very hard concept for a lot of us to get our heads around, but that's what I hear a lot of, that and oneness, and separation is an illusion. There is no separation. That's an interesting explanation in terms of physics. Another thing I wanted to ask you is when we have discussions about mediumship, often that kind of traverses into discussions about past lives and reincarnation and the lives in between life space. Do you have any experience in that realm as well?
Oh, all the time. I have found that when people get reactive to something they hear or see, they're getting triggered often because of a past life issue. They just need to delve into it and the answers will be there. As an example, when I was in Hawaii, I went out on the Arizona Memorial and I was ready to puke the whole time I was on there. I was panicking. I was having panic attacks. When I finally figured it out, I died on the Arizona in my past life.
Oh, wow.
So then it made sense. The way I figured that out is I was watching one of the new Pearl Harbor movies. And when Pearl Harbor got attacked, I was panicking and leaving the room. And I went, okay, what the heck is this? It wasn't because of what I was watching. It was like I was reliving what happened. And that's also why I'm claustrophobic in this life.
Okay.
So we always get signals and things. Every time I go up to Virginia City, which is supposedly a ghost town, nothing looks right to me. I just think that should be over there and that wasn't there. And it's like, where's that coming from? Well, I actually ran into a guy that I was married to in my past life and lived in Virginia City. I started telling him what I was getting about him and me. And he had had a past life regression, and everything I was telling him about his and my life together in the 1860s, he had gotten confirmed with his past life regression. And I wasn't picking up on his past life regression. I was picking up on him and me together. I mean, I was heartsick because in that life he had died and left me alone. I was feeling that pain.
So you did not need a past life regression or to otherwise be under hypnosis or in some kind of state to remember that. You just get flashes, or how do you actually see it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You get feelings. It was really funny, but I was just watching something that was violent, and I usually don't watch anything that's violent. And I got triggered and I turned it off really quick. And I went, okay, why are you getting triggered by this? And then I felt all of this repressed anger and rage that I'm holding. And I thought, we're going to work on that later. I shouldn't get triggered just because I'm seeing violence. It's not real. They're all actors. It's not really happening. It didn't really happen. Why am I getting triggered by it? So just being aware of how you react to stuff can be incredibly beneficial. But I think as far as reincarnation goes, it's physics. A soul or spirit, we're 99% energy in a 1% meat suit, right? Really?
You said it, not me.
I mean, if you took all the liquid out of a body and you took all the oxygen or air out of a body, you'd have a pancake with a bunch of bones sticking up and a tuft of hair. Mm-hmm. If they had any.
Well, I guess it has to be because of the past lives. I'm trying to envision this as a cycle. You mentioned actors a few moments ago, which reminded me of something. I was reading a book about the Long Island medium who was describing life as an episode of Saturday Night Live where everybody changes costumes and all these different skits are happening. But at the end of the night, everybody hugs. Also, the life in between life space has been described as almost like casting a stage play. What insights do you have about that?
Well, I have coffee with my mom every morning at 8:00, and she's been gone 4 years. And she's very adamant about pointing to clocks to get my attention when it's 8:00. And now she does it at night, too, which is hilarious. Because I tell her, no, we're not having coffee, not at 8:00 at night. And she'll go get decaf. You can get decaf. I mean, she's just totally logical about wanting to sit and have coffee. What I got from her passing, to me, was extraordinary. That everybody that we've been connected to through all our lives is there. And there's just love. She was funny. She was like on the side of her mouth going, they look fabulous. She was telling me how good everybody looked.
I've heard that too.
Yeah. And she said, and I got your pig. And then she starts naming off horses that I haven't even thought about in 30 years. Her telling me that, it's just sort of us finally being home, that we're out here having experiences and creating. I think people forget that. You cannot create if you're non-physical. We have to get into bodies in order to create. So if we have the essence or we're imbued with the energy of the creator, we have to be physical to create. And so I think we just change these bodies in, get another one, and come back. And I think in our moment of passing, like I told you, we did the forehead smacking. Oh, I could have had a V8. I think at that moment, we think about what we need to work on next time. I think the big things we plan on, things that are very traumatic. I think we plan on those before we come into physical. I think the rest is all manifestation, and we got to figure that out. At least in this day and age, we know what that is. We know how to do it too, because of the law of attraction.
You mentioned something earlier about all the people in our lives. Were you referring to what I believe is a soul group, a soul family that reincarnates in a group over and over again, or is that something different?
I think you could call it that. I'm really not comfortable with labels. I think we choose to come back sometimes into the same families because we're still working on those freaking dynamics that we haven't mastered yet. So in some cases, yeah, I think we do choose to come back into the same family groups. Remember when I was talking about being married in Virginia City? When I went back and kind of relived that in my mind, oh my goodness, my sister that I have now was my sister then. My dad was the guy that I married when I was a widow. And that was yucky.
How weird is that?
Oh, it was really weird. But some of the same people, some of it was yucky and some of it was, well, that makes sense. Just being pragmatic about it.
Other than the man that you shared a life with in the 1860s, do you ever reveal to the people in your life presently that you did have a past life with them, or do you kind of keep that close to the vest?
Oh, no. I walked into a dress shop one time and the owner of the dress shop was there. And I stopped and I stared at her. I said, oh my God, you're going to think this is weird. She goes, no, I'm feeling it too. I said, I feel like we're sisters in a past life. She goes, I'm getting that too. We hugged and cried. And I have never seen this woman before in my life.
Wow.
The funny thing is, here I am, this little short, silver-haired Jewish lady. She is 5'9", statuesque, gorgeous. She just happens to be Black. And we tell anyone who wants to hear it, we're sisters. When we're on Facebook together, we call each other sisters. I've had that feeling with a couple other people, but for both of us to start tearing up, like we found each other again, it was incredible. It was just incredible. So I do have that happen occasionally.
It's pretty cool, to say the least. I believe we talked about this last time, and this is a common question for everybody. Does everyone go to heaven when they pass?
Yes. Everybody goes to the other side. And I think when people get there and they're one with the God consciousness, they go, boy, I really screwed up. I think I really need some bigger challenges for more opportunities for growth. So maybe this next time I won't be such an asshole. Really.
That's incredible. I love that.
Yeah, I think they do. But if we didn't all go home and be with that energy that is source, we'd never learn. And hell is just something that was devised to scare the bejesus out of people. You know, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. No, hell is here on earth. It's definitely here on earth. And it's of people's own making. It really is.
How have these experiences changed your views on religion, or have they actually confirmed certain things?
That's a really good question. I think in a lot of ways, I'm just much more spiritual than any religion. I had 2 visions with Jesus. Those were weird. We were bathed in the light, sobbing with joy. You get messages from him, and then it just changes you. So my perception of him is master healer. It's not Lord and Savior. It's master healer. So as if that's very different. He said all this and more you can do. And he was talking about healing work. He never would have said the words that are attributed to him, which is the basis of all Christian religions, is the only way to God is through him. He was so humble. He never would have said that. Never. So that just kind of destroys the whole thing about Christian religions. You have to accept him as your Lord and Savior. That's man-made. That is not from him. Seriously.
That's great. That's not the first time I've heard that. One of the speakers that came on a while back talks about the Nag Hammadi Gospels, where Jesus is basically saying, instead of follow me, become me, which is consistent with what you just said.
Abso-freaking-lutely. Really.
I do believe the Mormons are of the belief that a mortal man can actually become a god, which is a lot more in line with what you just said rather than you must follow me. When you go to church and the pastor says, everyone raise their hand if you want to be saved or something like that, I think, okay, I know this guy means well, but there's something about that that just seems off to me. You agree?
It's very much off. It has nothing to do with physics. Seriously, it has nothing to do with physics unless you look at the fact that he's saying, so with energy healing, you can heal yourself. And then you're doing what I said to do.
Anything else we need to know about soul groups and soul agreements, which I think you've already touched on? When someone goes back home and says, oh, I really was kind of a jerk. I think next time I'm going to work on this and that and be a little bit less of a jerk.
Right.
Right?
One of the things that I get asked a lot because I work with disabled kids is I work with these quad CP kids and I would just go, why? Why would someone choose to come into this incarnation that's severely disabled? The only answer that I ever got, and this is hard for a lot of people to accept, is that kids that are born with childhood cancer or severe disabilities, they're a past life suicide for a temporary reason. They have heartbreak that they can't get over. That's just too much. And there's so much gray in suicide too. So much gray. They didn't overcome the challenges, so they took their own life. And like I said, there's lots of gray. Don't beat me up about this, people. If somebody was suffering from severe depression and had tried absolutely everything within their wheelhouse to get through the depression and they just couldn't take it anymore, they may, being in the operative word, choose to come back either severely disabled or with childhood cancer as a bigger challenge for more opportunities for growth. We always have a ripple effect where the people around this person have opportunities for growth too.
The other people, the people in the group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just don't think it's all mandated. I think it's really done by choice. The hard part for us to fathom as puny humans is that we're making the decisions when we're one with the God consciousness. Mm-hmm. Things look totally different when you're one with the God consciousness than when you're in human form. Completely different.
Let's talk about grief. It seems to me that a lot of people want to know their past loved one is not gone forever, that they're somewhere. They're just not in the physical.
I love doing mediumship. I love it. And I do a lot of it about pets because losing a pet is the same. I don't care who doesn't like this. Losing a pet is exactly the same as losing a human loved one. Grief is grief. It all sucks. But when you get a reading and you hear silly, funny things that are evidentiary, they're based in evidence, because I can't make this stuff up. This stuff is just too specific. I have a lot of instances of this in the testimonials on my website about what I got and then shared with the people. And they were like, there's no freaking way you can know that stuff. There's no way. It helps them to heal. And what I love is when I'm doing a medium reading and the deceased tells me what the human here is doing in their life. Like you got rid of their recliner, or you change the curtains in the kitchen, or you still have their coffee cup in the cupboard that's got this thing on it. That stuff, you just can't make that up. And when they realize that they're still around and they're around all the time and how to feel them, and then to take it one step further, to learn to do this. That's why I love my book, The Physics of Mediumship, because it teaches anybody that, number one, you have these abilities, you're born with them. And number two, you can develop them. They're not gifts. They're abilities that we all have. And oh my God, it's so fun readings to do.
So you've actually trained people to become mediums, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And these are people that have had no experience prior to connecting with me and getting one of my books and starting to try to do it themselves. A lot of them get so confused. They go, I need a session. Can you help me out with some of my questions? Absolutely. I love teaching people to do it. And I've actually taught people to do this, that they went into it doing animal communication, and sure enough, they started hearing dead people. Terri, you got to help me. I'm hearing dead people.
I would think that a lot of people would want to know about their pets. You're right. Losing a pet, especially if you've had them for a really long time. It's like losing a family member. It's pretty tough. Speaking of losing people, what about those spirits that are still stuck? I think they're referred to as grounded spirits. And what happens to them?
There's no such thing. That's a total fallacy. Because if you're what you call a bad medium, if you're in it for the money, then you have to come from fear and negativity. You can't come from happy, happy, happy. Because if they're happy, happy, and you swat them on the fanny and off they go and they're fine and happy, you can't get them again for their money. What people don't understand is the physics of this, Johnny, that when people die, everything negative gets shed off and left behind. And many, even TV mediums, do not have discernment. They cannot tell the difference between the negative energy that a person has shed off and the person on the other side. They lump it all together. You cannot do that and help people. So if you're getting negative or what you think of as a stuck person, oh, they've got unfinished business or they have regrets. You've got one medium that wrote a book about regrets and you've got another one who wrote it about unfinished business. It's just not true. If you're getting negative, you are dumpster diving in the negative energy garbage that spirits have shed off or humans have shed off before they've gone to the other side. That's it.
No one gets stuck.
The people that are stuck are the ones that are in a coma, persistent vegetative state with severe Alzheimer's. Their physical body is still here, but their soul or spirit is trapped because it's attached to that body. So not until they die will their spirit be released from that physical form. That's stuck, really. But you can still communicate with them too. That's my second book.
What is your first book?
The first book is The Cowgirl Shaman Way, 7 Easy Steps to Develop Your Intuitive Ability.
Okay.
It tells you how I got started and gives you the 7 steps, which is the same in all 3 books, on how to be able to develop your own intuitive abilities.
And you also have a series that is now out on Peacock. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the series is on Peacock. It's called Paul T. Goldman, and it's hilarious. It's a docudrama. So it's a documentary comedy drama. And it's the most bizarre thing I've ever been involved with. It's out now on Peacock. And my readings are in there because the main character called me like back in 2005 and he said, my wife is insisting on having her name put on all of my assets. And I said, God, she feels like a hooker. He says, it's my wife. I said, I don't care. She wants to get paid for sex, but she doesn't want the money on the dresser. She wants your stuff. She's going for big. I said, you need to hire a private investigator and figure out what she's really doing. Not only was she a hooker, she was a madam over other girls, and she was into sex trafficking and passport fraud.
And this is in the series.
Oh, God, yeah. It's hilarious. I've never seen a show like this, where it's like a show about doing a show about doing a show. The way he puts it together, it's crazy. They go from me saying something to hearing what I actually said at the time, back in 2005, on audio tapes. Then it shows Dee Wallace playing me saying the exact same thing.
Wow. I definitely want to watch that. Anything else you'd like our listeners to know about?
Just that I love doing readings. I do readings 6 days a week. You can get a hold of me through my website, www.terrijay.com. You can sign up for readings. You can sign up for my newsletter. And I can help you on your own journey of discovering your own intuitive abilities that you were born with.
Terri, very fun episode. Thanks again for coming on. Something tells me we might actually do a part 2 at one point, especially after I watch your show. I will put the link to your website in the show notes and the transcript as well. You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. You can also leave us a review on iTunes as well. For more info, please go to closertovenus.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.